Chapter 21. I was too tired to dream, but that didn't matter when a dream god was involved. Morpheus strode into the misty bleakness of my blank mind and shook me until I became aware of him. Vervain! Morpheus shouted. Morph! I frowned at him and looked around groggily. Where are we? Nowhere, he said. This is a blank dreamscape. What the hell is happening in that mirror that you're too tired to even dream? The mirror is trying to force us to kill ourselves. I focused on him until I could think clearer. Did Fenrir give everyone my message? Yeah, and we found Nemesis. You did? Fantastic. Perked up. Is she working on breaking the curse? Why are we still in here? That's the thing. He grimaced. She can't break the curse. What you talking about, Willis? I growled. Auntie Nem created that curse to make sure Narcissus never got out, he said. She can't break it. At least not from outside the mirror. What does that mean? Nemesis says she can't break it, but she put a safety clause in the curse in case anyone else was sucked in by mistake. Wonderful. My hopes lifted again. What is it? It won't be easy, he warned me. You'll need to find the mirror's weak spot. Nemesis says there's a tiny imperfection in the glass, and that's the only place where the anti-curse will have an effect. How do I find the weak spot? Is it in the portal's glass? No, not the portal. It's in the curse itself. In the one place the mirror can alter, he said. Look for a mirror within the mirror, one with an imperfection. It will be a black spot like those that appear on antique mirrors. That shadow is its vulnerability. You must stand before it and say the word, diacope. Diacope, I repeated. Got it. But Morph, the mirror has ways of forcing me through it or keeping me where it wants me. I don't think it will let me anywhere near its weak point. Nemesis said that it can't block you from it. He shook his head. It's a failsafe she worked into the curse. As soon as you set your intention to seek the weakness, it must open the way. She thought of everything, I murmured. She does this a lot. Morpheus grimaced. It's kind of her thing, and she's been caught in her own curses enough times to have learned how to cast them properly. I suppose if you're a goddess of vengeance, your curses should be perfect. I huffed. Odin told her what you said about the mirror feeding on humans, Morpheus went on. Auntie Nem said if it's been taking energy, it's probably grown beyond what she originally created, but no matter how strong it gets, it can't go against its own nature. It can build upon its foundation, but it can't change it. She said it shouldn't have been able to kill those humans because one of the first laws she wove into it was that it couldn't kill. She wanted Narcissus to suffer for eternity, so she made sure the mirror couldn't kill him or anyone else. It didn't kill the humans, I explained. They died from starvation. There's no real food in here. Oh, that makes more sense, he said with relief. And it also means that the mirror hasn't altered itself too much. That's a good thing. I had suspected that it wasn't able to kill, I said. It keeps trying to make us kill ourselves or Narcissus. Oh, don't kill Narcissus, Morpheus said urgently. If he dies, the whole curse will implode and take you with it. It's fortunate that he's been playing nice then, I muttered. So it can't kill us, and it can't bar the way to its weakness. Anything else? It can't release Narcissus, he added. But that's obvious. It's been trying to get us to kill Narcissus, I said. We think it's because Narcissus refused to kill us and told the mirror that we were getting him out. I suppose that would create an aggressive response and a curse, Morpheus mused. But I wouldn't think it would turn suicidal. If you killed Narcissus, you'd kill the mirror too. Is it possible that the mirror doesn't know what killing Narcissus will do? Morpheus blinked. I suppose that condition is merely a part of the curse. Would be similar to the way a pancreas works in the human body. It's something you don't notice until it malfunctions. No one has tried to kill Narcissus before, so it's never had that clause. Threatened, I concluded. Just so. I think I'll keep this information to myself, I announced. For now it may be best to keep the mirror at odds with Narcissus. Oh, and I asked Nem about your magic, why it wasn't functioning right, and if you should try to use it, Morph said. And she said that when you pass through the glass, the mirror collects it, sort of like a coat check for magic. You'll get it back if you pass through the glass again or if the mirror is destroyed. Since you can't pass through the Glass, the only way to get your magic back is to destroy the mirror. The mirror has my magic? I growled. Your god magic, he clarified. That's what it's made to do, entrap God. Magic. Nem said Narcissus shouldn't be able to use his magic at all. It's because the mirror is allowing it. So maybe they did become allies of a sort, I murmured. And that would explain why I could start to feel my star, but then it just fizzled out. Yeah, in there all you are is a witch. And a dragon, I reminded him. But without my star I can't shift. I risk hurting my other beasts. Not if they're in the glass, Morph pointed out. I can still feel them. I shook my head. The mirror may have taken my magic, but their links are inside me. Like a claim ticket, he said thoughtfully. You're right. Don't risk using the dragon. Her magic might travel down the line and hurt the others wherever the mirror is holding them. I'll have to give this some thought. Whatever you do, be careful, Morpheus said. We're all waiting at Pride Palace for you. Well, except for me. I've been waiting in the dream realm for you to go to sleep. But I'll be heading back now. Thank you, Morpheus. I hugged him. We wouldn't have a chance of escaping without you. Just get out safely. He kissed my cheek and faded into the mists. Sure, no problem, I muttered. All I have to do is find the weak spot in a cursed mirror and shout the magic word to break the spell, all while it tries to get me to commit suicide. Just another day in my life. C'est la vie. Chapter 22. I awoke in the clothes I'd arrived in. A full set of underwear, purple heels, and a black linen over-the-knee dress that should have been horribly wrinkled but seemed to be freshly laundered every time it was returned to me. I sat up and yawned awake. I was in a frothy white four-poster bed, my body sunken into its down comforter and veiled by its diaphanous curtains. The rest of the room seemed just as feminine through the haze of white. A padded bench at the foot of the bed, a lace-covered dressing table to the right, and an oriental folding screen beside it. There was a collection of dainty chairs set between the vanity and the bed, and Narcissus was sitting in one. Narcissus stood and approached me. Vervain, are you all right? I groaned as I pushed my way through the bed curtains. Yeah, thank you. You arrived just in the nick of time. I'm afraid the mirror has learned viciousness and violence from its victims, he said softly. And from me. What do you mean? Please sit down. He waved at a chair and waited for me to take it before he resumed his seat. Have you seen Kirill or Trevor? I asked. I can feel that they're alive, but beyond that I don't know. Normally my ring would be able to tell me if they were in trouble, but I suppose we're all in trouble. I saw Trevor briefly. He grimaced. He tried to kill me. I'm sorry. He was acting upon an illusion. Narcissus waved it away. The mirror, as I mentioned, has learned to be ruthless. What is it that you want to tell me? I knew you were coming, he admitted. A few weeks ago a man summoned me to the portal with a spell. He spoke to me as you spoke to your husbands through written messages. He told me that you'd be coming and that if I was able to get you to kill yourself, I'd become strong enough to break my curse. I went still. So why didn't you do that? I don't trust that easily. Narcissus smirked. Why would this stranger help me? It seemed just as likely that he simply wanted me to do his dirty work for him. He said that he had a way of enchanting the mirror so it would pull you in. Normally, the curse prohibits gods from entering the mirror, but he swore he had a way around it. Did he say what that way was? I leaned forward. No, but he was adamant, Narcissus said. I only nodded to him, and he left. When you showed up with your husbands, I didn't know it was you at first. He said you'd be alone. But then you revealed yourselves to be gods, and I realized who you must be, the Godhunter. Yes. And now someone's hunting me. It would appear so, he agreed. But it isn't me, Vervain. I don't know what that god was up to, but I know I can't consume your power. That's the mirror's ability, not mine. Even if I could, I wouldn't do it. You've offered me a way out, and I'm going to take my chances with you. Thank you, I said softly. And I happen to know. I stopped and looked around suspiciously. I'll tell you in a minute. First, there's just one thing I want to talk to you about. What? I saw the collection of hair in your closet. Narcissus nodded, completely unsurprised or guilty. You want to know who they're from? I know who they're from, I huffed. At least I'm fairly certain. They're from the people who died here, aren't they? Yes. What I want to know is why you have them. Narcissus blinked in surprise. To remember them by, of course. Memento mori. Come again. The mirror consumes them until there is nothing left, he explained. No body to bury and no memorial to their life. After the first few died, I felt as if I should do something for them. I couldn't do much, but I found that if I took a lock of their hair, the mirror would let me keep it. So I began to take the hair and label them like graves. I noted their names, the places they were from, and the year they came to me, so there would be a record of what happened to them. He stopped and swallowed visibly. It seemed to be the least that I could do for them. Oh, I whispered. Suddenly, he was less psychopath and more romantic. I know you must think I'm a monster, Narcissus whispered. You must think that I've done horrible things to end up here, and you'd be right. I was so self-absorbed and arrogant that when humans killed themselves for me, I thought it was the proper way of things. The gods are meant to receive sacrifices after all. But now I see that they weren't sacrifices. They were heartbroken people who I hurt. A sacrifice is given with love and respect. But my victims killed themselves out of despair. Nemesis was right to imprison me. If you truly feel that way, then you deserve a second chance, I said gently. And I'm glad to be the one to give it to you. I dropped my voice to a whisper. I know a way out, Narcissus. You do. He leaned forward eagerly. I'm setting my intentions to find the imperfection in the mirror, I declared. Formally. The room shook angrily around us, and Narcissus' eyes went wide. We got to our feet as the palace continued to rumble. Our arms stretched out to steady ourselves as things fell off shelves and shattered. Then the room disappeared, and a vast mirror chamber took its place. What was that? Narcissus asked in wonder. The mirror must open the path to its imperfection once we've set our intention to find it, I said. And once we find it, we can break the curse. What's the imperfection? I was told to look for a mirror with a spot of black on it, I said. Like the kind you'd find on an antique mirror. Narcissus gaped at me. I've seen that mirror. I know where it is. Narcissus started running. The mirrored wall before him split open, and he plunged into the black void. I didn't hesitate. I dove into the dark after him. Chapter 23. Tima. Kirill's cry brought me to a stumbling halt. I'd been blindly running after Narcissus down the dark hallway, but then a light pierced the shadows and spanned out. A spotlight fell on Kirill. He was strapped to a stone altar several feet to my right. He was in his black lion form, and little giggling creatures swarmed over him with knives in their hands. They were spindly-limbed and skinny with pale flesh and bulbous heads. Their sharp teeth gnashed as they sheared Kirill's beautiful mane away. Tufts of fur falling like sooty snow around him. He roared and shook, trying to dislodge them, but they held firm like tiny bull riders. Kirill! I cried brokenly. Tima, help me! It's not him! Narcissus shouted over the giggles. Look at him, he's in lion form. He hasn't been able to shift here, has he? No, I whispered. And this is the exact thing he feared. That's a little convenient. It's the mirror trying to stop you by reflecting your fears back at you. Narcissus said. Come on, let's keep moving. This isn't Narnia, you moron. I snarled at the mirror. I resolutely turned away from the image of my husband, and the spotlight winked out. Mocking male laughter followed me down the shadowy, sinister hallway. Caught up with Narcissus and noticed how his eyes slid side to side as he ran. He was scared. He shouldn't be. The mirror couldn't kill him. But the mirror might not know that. Even as I thought it, Narcissus stumbled and a noose wrapped around his ankle. He fell backwards in the up, yanked into the air by his foot to dangle before me. A sword appeared at my feet. I stared from it to Narcissus. Put him down, I'm not killing him, I said calmly. He is a murderer. A hollow voice echoed around me. The years have broken him, Godhunter. Narcissus is precisely the sort of god you kill. Do your duty. Kill the evil god. No. Those braids aren't tributes, they're trophies, it went on. Liar. Narcissus shouted. You're the killer, not I. I cannot kill, the mirror said. You killed them for me. You sacrificed them, so that I would grow in strength and bind you to me in that strength. He is the liar, Godhunter. He has swayed you with his soft words. It was his idea to pull humans through my glass and then kill them. None of them died by starvation. They were all murdered by Narcissus on a mirrored altar. Their blood gave me power, and in exchange for that, I shared my power with him. That isn't true, Vervain, Narcissus begged me with his eyes. I swear it. Have never murdered anyone with my hands, only my indifference. See how easily he lies, the mirror went on. He is what humans call a psychopath, completely devoid of emotion. He has no sympathy or kindness in him. All he cares about is himself. Fuck you, mirror, Narcissus cursed. How's that for emotion? Nothing you say will sway me, I said. Put him down. You must see the truth, Godhunter, the mirror shouted. The truth is, if I kill him you will implode, I said. Everything went still. Even Narcissus stopped fighting his bonds and stared at me. No, the mirror said. Look deeper inside yourself. I told it. Your sole purpose is to hold Narcissus for eternity. If he dies, your purpose dies with him. You will self-destruct. It's how you were built. More silence, and then came a screeching roar. Narcissus dropped to the floor and stared up at me in shock. You curse yourself if you free him, the mirror shouted. This is my warning to you, Godhunter. If it's the truth, I thank you for it, I said. But I have no choice. There is only one way out for me. Unless you'd like to send my husbands and me back from where you took us. I cannot, it said grimly. Then I must continue. I waved Narcissus forward. Let's go, Narc. Narcissus got to his feet and started shambling forward, his expression fixed. Forward in Chapter 24. Trevor's screams turned my head briefly, but I kept going. I knew it was another trick. The screams tore at me though, and I had to clench my teeth to keep myself from looking. But then I smelled him. Trevor. I stopped and turned. My wolf was chained to a metal floor by his ankle. He was snarling and fighting for all he was worth, but he couldn't shift and it was hard to battle. Beast as a man. I screamed when one of the numerous lions surrounding him tore a swipe in his side. Trevor howled and bashed at it with his fists. Another came at him from behind. Lethal claws gleamed in the dim light and Trevor's eyes glowed. His gaze flicked to me wildly. Run, Manelska, he shouted. I felt the line connecting us inside me and knew that it was the real Trevor. He was being torn apart by the very beasts who were precious to me. Damn you, I shouted. But I knew the mirror couldn't kill Trevor. The best thing I could do for him was to find that flawed mirror and get us out. It can't kill him. Narcissus echoed my thoughts. It only looks as if he's being hurt. Trust me, he isn't. Now come on. Narcissus grabbed my hand and pulled me down the hallway. It ended in a simple steel wall and a full-length mirror hung on it. It was an exact replica of the mirror I'd been pulled through, gilded Narcissus flowers and all. And in its center there lurked a black smudge. I ran for the mirror and, as soon as I stood in front of its tiny flaw, I shouted the anti-curse. Diacope. A shivering started. A trembling that invaded every surface. Narcissus' stare shot to mine, but I only held it for a second. I was too busy peering around myself in wariness. I expected the mirror to fight and wail, but it only shattered. The sound of breaking glass was piercing, ringing in my ears until I covered them with my hands. Suddenly it stopped, the silence nearly as jolting as the shattering. Remember my warning, Godhunter, the mirror said in sad resignation. And then everything went. Chapter 25. The dark brightened and I opened my eyes. I was standing in my dressing room, covered in a fine sparkling powder. Kirill, Trevor, and Narcissus stood beside me. The mirror was gone. Even the frame had disintegrated. Narcissus just stared around himself in shock, but my husband shouted in relief and hugged me between them, glittering mirror dust falling from us like sea spray. Off waves. Vervain. Odin's voice came through the door. Is that you? It's me, I called back. We're all here. Open up. The sound of locks sliding came through the wood and then the door was flung back and a crowd of people was revealed. Not only were my other husbands and boyfriend there, but also Nemesis, Morpheus, Fenrir, Vidar, Valley, the whole God Squad, and several of my lions. They all made relieved sounds and then cheered as the men and I stepped out of the dressing room. There was a lot of hugging and a few tears, but halfway through it I noticed Narcissus standing off to the side with Nemesis. Your last chance. I caught the tail end of what she was saying. If you go back to your old ways, I will come up with an even better punishment. We all stopped to stare at them. I heard the mirror's voice in my memory, warning me about Narcissus, but what was done. As much as I wanted to give Narcissus a second chance, I was glad that Nemesis would be watching him. If he screwed up and proved the mirror true, she'd put him back on ice or glass, as it were. I have changed, Nemesis, Narcissus said calmly, and I'm grateful for the chance to prove it. You won't have to cast your revenge upon me again. Nemesis didn't seem swayed by Narcissus' speech. She is the Greek goddess of revenge, after all, and she probably heard hundreds of versions of it before. But she finally nodded and turned away from him. Nemesis approached me and shook my hand. You did well, Godhunter, Nemesis said. I'm sorry you got caught in my enchantment, but I'm glad you were able to use the safety clause to get out. Honestly, I don't understand it. The mirror shouldn't have been able to pull in a goddess. It had some help, I said and grimaced. An old enemy of mine, well, an enemy from the future, you know what? Let's just go with enemy. He warned Narcissus that I'd be entering the mirror and advised him to get me to sacrifice myself and then take my magic, that it would make him strong enough to break the curse. Yes, Morpheus told us about Cause, Ree said. We've started searching for him. I'm tracing the mirror through the auction house I bought it from. Hopefully, the trail will lead us to Cause or one of his associates. Good. I nodded. But there's more. Cause cast his own spell on the mirror so that it would pull me in. I glanced at Kirill and Trevor. And yes, Trevor was back. I think you two just got yanked along with me. I'm grateful that we did, Trevor said. I'd hate for you to have been alone in there. I'm glad that last scene was just an illusion. I laid my palm against Trevor's cheek. That one nearly got me. It wasn't pleasant, but it seems that it was all in my head. But even if it had been real, you needed to get to that flaw to get us all out of the mirror, Trevor said. It was the right call. Remember that in case anything similar happens in the future. It had better not, I said in a dangerous tone. What illusion? Kirill asked. You don't want to know, Trevor and I said together. We'll look for the other two gods as well, Azrael interrupted. Gish and Thisany. I'd imagine they'd be in on whatever Cause had planned. And I imagine that this won't be the end of it, Odin said grimly. Once they discover that the mirror has been broken, they'll devise a new plan. Where's Lesya? I asked suddenly. She's with Sam and Zariel, Fallon said. We didn't want the girls waiting here in case I came out dead? I lifted a brow. Or severely injured, Odin amended. Do you want me to get her? Fallon offered. Not just yet. I shook my head. There are a few things we need to talk about. First, like finding the gods who are gunning for me. The Froknar are on the hunt, Fenrir declared as he clasped his son's shoulder supportively. Our wolves will find them and then we're all going to have a nice talk. He bared his teeth. Yeah, somehow I didn't think there would be a lot of words involved in that conversation. I grinned at my father-in-law. I wanted in on it. No way, Min Elska, Trevor said firmly to my look. You have our son to think about, and he's already been put in enough danger. I looked up into his honey stare and saw the horror of the abortion scene still haunting him. My alpha mate had waited a long time to see his child born, and the threat against Vero had shaken Trevor to the core. I hugged him tightly. I won't let anything happen to Vero. No, we won't, he vowed, because you are staying right here until he's born. Trevor, I said gently. No, Min Elska. Trevor held me away from him so he could glare at me. No. More danger for you and our son. Let's give them some privacy, Odin said softly as he ushered everyone out. Fenrir gave his son a pat on the back as he passed by and said to me, You are one of the bravest women I know, little Frammy, and one of the smartest. I hope you will use both your strength and wisdom to protect my grandson. I sighed deeply as Fenrir closed the door behind him. Vero himself would tell me not to sit this out, I said to Trevor. I'm sure he would. Trevor grimaced. From what you've told me, you raised him to be another you. But he looked like another you, I countered. And I ached to meet him, Trevor said softly. Please understand that, Min Elska. Every time you put yourself in danger, I'm terrified not only of what may happen to you but also of what may happen to our son. I've seen what happens to your children when you fight. I clenched my teeth because he was right. Both of my pregnancies had gone badly. Not because of any kind of medical condition but because I'd been attacked. Both times. The first time my son had to split himself in two to save us. And the next time my daughter had to be removed from my body and left to grow in a god incubator. I hated that I missed the experience of carrying Lesya to term, but at least she had lived. It had been a close call. We were here in Pride Palace when we were taken into the mirror, I calmly pointed out. That was a rare occurrence, Trevor said. And there will be no more god items allowed into this house. I will try my best to keep out of danger, I relented. Thank you. He huffed in relief and pulled me into a hug. Now there's just one more thing for me to do before I'll be completely satisfied. What's that? Trevor picked me up, carried me to the bed, and set me down on the mattress. He climbed onto it beside me with a wicked grin. Get on your hands and knees, mate, he growled. I did a double take, but it was still Trevor. The wolf glinted in his eyes, but he was just along for the ride, as it were. I smiled slowly and bent forward. Trevor crawled over to me and positioned himself between my legs. He flipped my dress over my back and tore away my panties with his claws. Then he was inside me, his hands back to human and grabbing my hips roughly as he slammed home. I groaned in pleasure as his hard flesh slid into my softness. It was just what I needed after the tortures of the mirror. A reaffirmation of life. Pushed back into Trevor's thrusts and he went wild. Trevor snarled and grunted above me, his hips slapping my ass with loud smacks. I had to tense my arms to keep from getting shoved down into the mattress. Finally I gave up and bent forward, pressing my face against the bed. Trevor howled triumphantly. The angle had given him better access and his thrusts went even deeper. One hand snaked forward and began to rub me furiously as the sounds coming from his throat became more savage. My body shivered and tensed as it strained for release. Then we exploded together. Him inside me and me around him. My body relaxed with a sigh and Trevor followed me down, covering me completely. We shivered through the aftershocks together, and then he slid slowly out of me and shifted to his side. With a smooth motion, Trevor tucked me in against his chest and curled himself protectively around me. Now I'm home, he whispered in my ear. Chapter 29. Each morning, a new lover would come for me and whisk me away to another exotic destination. After wandering through the Taj Mahal with Kirill and experiencing the profound weight of love and heartache that had gone into its creation, I explored Machu Picchu with Toby, the entire ruins empty except for us. It was utterly amazing and humbling. My experiences in India and Peru touched me on a deeply spiritual level. The Taj Mahal was a testament to the lengths a man would go to for love, and Machu Picchu was proof of the greatness humankind has always possessed. If I ever doubted my ability to reach a goal or conquer an enemy, I would remember those two places. If humans could create such things without magic, then I should be able to do anything. My Valentine's Day/week was going spectacularly. After Kirill and Toby, I went to Chile with Azrael. We went gliding over narrow, frigid rivers between sheer pastel blue, translucent glaciers glowing with sunlight divinity. Departed before that frozen glory, leaving me feeling peacefully insignificant. Then AZ and I made love in a wood-paneled refuge with a view of the Patagonian mountains as a backdrop. In the middle of the night, Azrael took me flying over the park, a gleaming river to one side and snow-capped mountains to the other. I kept us warm as we flew, and even when we landed to have wild sex on a steep rocky slope, my bare back pressed against the mountain as Azrael held my thighs. First he protected us with his wings, but I asked him to put them away so I could see the world stretching out behind him as we made love. Despite our romp on the mountainside and our glacier glide, my day in Chile felt luxurious compared to my day with Trevor and the wolf. Then, from a pampered experience of nature, I went into the untamed wilderness. But Trevor made roughing it sexy. We ran free in our wolf forms through the forest during the day and then cuddled by a campfire beneath the stars at night. We made love in the open. A thick mattress, Trevor's only concession to comfort. Flames and moonlight colored our skin in molten metals as the forest clicked, creaked and cried out around us. It was savagely beautiful, just like Trevor, and our lovemaking became a primitive dance that neither of us could ever tire of. I wish we could stay here forever, Trevor whispered against my neck after one particularly passionate session. We had just been for a wolf run and had shifted back to human to make love on the shore of a lake. We'd gotten terribly dirty, grass and debris everywhere, but neither of us cared. The lake was a few feet away. We could wash when we were done. Trevor was still inside me, slowly twitching back to life, so I wasn't sure when exactly we'd make it to the water. But again, I didn't care. This is magnificent, I agreed. But there are other wondrous things in the realms. I've had recent proof of that with these Valentine's gifts. Agreed, Trevor murmured. Then he lifted his face to look at me. But I'd give up the wonders of all the world simply to have you beside me, running wild through this forest for eternity. I love you, honey eyes, I whispered. There was nothing else I could say to that. We both knew that I wouldn't give up everything to be there with him. There were too many other people who I treasured. But instead of being saddened by that fact, Trevor accepted it, along with my love. I love you more than the moon, min elska, he said softly. And I would give to you if I could. You've given me the world, after all, when you conceived our son. And that was why Trevor could accept that I couldn't abandon everyone for him and his forest, because soon he'd have someone else he could never give up. 2. Having a dream of living alone with your lover is sweet, but the reality of a life full of love from family and friends as well as lovers is far more satisfying in its reality. We celebrated that growing truth under Trevor's precious moon and howled with the beasts when we found our release. In the morning, Odin arrived to trace me to Bali, the Four Seasons resort at Sion. Dear gods, I have never been so wowed by a hotel before. In the middle of a lush jungle, we entered the hotel through a covered bridge that spanned the treetops and deposited us on the top of the hotel. We stood on a platform in the center of the circular roof with a pond full of lily pads filling the rest of it and the most amazing view of the verdant mountains surrounding us. We headed downstairs into the hotel, checked in, and were taken to our private villa, entirely hidden in the forest. The rooms were all white and golden wood, with mosquito netting enclosing the massive bed and slatted doors making up most of the outer walls. Opening them turned the villa into a pavilion. A very luxurious pavilion. We had the royal villa with one of those unique through-the-roof entrances, similar to the main portion of the hotel. It rose a proud 2 stories with a private dining room, staff quarters, outdoor showers, a bathroom with a tub that might as well have been outside, and its own pool overlooking its private gardens and the Ayung River, a Balinese masterpiece. The hotel offered unique activities like cooking and wood carving classes as well as private temple tours and hiking. I wanted to bring Kirill back sometime just so he could take one of the carving classes, but Odin and I weren't interested in taking classes. We opted for exploring on our own. We could get around a lot faster without humans hampering us. Odin and I wandered through temples and jungles for hours hand in hand and sometimes much closer than that. Yes, I kissed my Norse god husband in an Indonesian temple. It somehow seemed appropriate, and had sex with him pressed up against a tree in the jungle. We had a fabulous time and were heading back to our villa through the gardens when Odin spotted someone neither of us had seen in years, over 4 years to be exact. I knew this because the last time I'd seen her was at Yule's funeral. Thrud, Odin called out. Thrud was strolling down one of the paths as we had been, looking as stunningly beautiful as the last time I'd seen her, though a bit more relaxed. She had Thor's golden red hair and Sif's icy eyes, and both were shown off to perfection. Her hair hung loosely down her back in soft waves, her eyes brightened by a soft application of sienna liner, and a flowing cotton dress revealed just enough of her curvy body to tease without being tasteless. Thrud tensed when she saw me, and I knew exactly why. She blamed me for Yule's death. Not only that, Thrud also blamed me for placing his soul in my son's body. She either hadn't believed me when I told her of Yule's wishes or didn't agree with her brother's choice to start fresh in a new life. She hadn't contacted me once since he'd been reborn. I thought she'd at least want to meet Brevin, but it seemed as if she was still a bit bitter, and really for years is nothing to a goddess. Grandfather. Thrud nodded respectfully to Odin. Godhunter. Her look was far less respectful when she slapped it on me, but then she had more than Yule to blame me for. I had also killed her mother. What are you doing here? The same as you, I expect, Odin said. We came to enjoy the hotel. It's lovely. Her tone softened as she looked around. Have you seen your father recently? Odin asked. Thrud sighed heavily. I know he misses you, Odin went on. If you could spare a few minutes to trace over to Bilskinir, he'd be delighted to see you. I'll think about it. All right. It was good to see you, granddaughter. Odin hugged her. Thrud stiffened but then awkwardly hugged him back. We started to leave but I paused. If you'd ever like to see Brevin, I'd be happy to take you into Fairy, I offered. Does he even know who he is? She asked angrily. He's starting to remember, yes. I nodded. He remembers Caitlin, so I'm sure he'll remember you. She looked surprised. Oh, maybe I will stop by. It's his birthday soon, I said. If you'd like to attend the party, let your father know. Thor will be joining us in Fairy. Just tell him I invited you. All right. She nodded stiffly and turned away. You're welcome, I muttered. Odin laughed and steered me back toward our villa. How about a couple's massage on our private veranda to ease those muscles my granddaughter just tensed? That sounds wonderful, I agreed as I watched the gleaming goddess glide away. As much as she annoyed me, I hoped she would accept the invitation. Brevin would be thrilled to meet another sister, and I had a feeling that it would be good for Thrud too. Chapter 30. After making love to Ree all night in a Scottish castle, I finally returned to my normal life. I took a nap with Ree before I faced it, but my sleep was interrupted by a dream god. This time he wasn't in my dreams. Morpheus shouted as he rushed into my bedroom. Huh. I groggily opened my eyes. A broad golden chest blocked my view, but I was okay with that. I smiled and ran my hands over the curves of Ree's muscles and then up the side of his throat. He mumbled happily in his sleep and automatically lowered his mouth to mine. Ree woke mid-kiss, his body twining around me, his center seeking mine. Hello, Morpheus shouted from the foot of our bed. Ree and I looked over at him in irritation. My husband kept maneuvering himself between my legs beneath the sheet. What do you want? Ree asked before he lowered his lips to my neck and began sliding his way downward. Nemesis is gone, Morpheus said. Just up and disappeared. I was supposed to meet her at her place this morning, but she wasn't there. That's not like her. Wait, what? Did you find any clues as to where she went? Pushed Ree back gently, but he only pouted and set his hands to the task he had originally given his mouth. No, but she's been watching Narcissus and she told me that his father gave him a portion of his territory. Morph scowled as Ree casually followed his hands beneath the covers. I'm still here, Ree. I know, Ree muttered angrily before he sucked in my nipple. Ree. I pushed him away. I may have lost all my inhibitions, but that doesn't mean I've suddenly turned into an exhibitionist. Cut it out. Fine. Ree grimaced and got out of bed. I'll be in the bathroom taking a shower if you want to join me. Ree walked to the bathroom completely nude, and Morpheus averted his eyes. Averted my eyes too, but for a completely different reason. One glance at Ree's nudity, and I'd be hopelessly distracted. Go on, Morph. I sat up and tucked the blankets firmly around me. Auntie Nem said that she tried to get into Narcissus' territory and couldn't. Morph sat heavily on the edge of the bed. We were meeting today to talk about it. That's not unusual, I said. Gods ward their territories. But once Nem has cursed a god, they can't ward against her, Morph said grimly. Narcissus should not have been able to keep her out. Something's wrong. I can feel it. Okay, give me a few minutes to get dressed, I said. I'll meet you downstairs. Thank you. Morph sighed in relief and hurried out of the room. I glanced at the bathroom door and sighed too. I didn't have time to indulge in a shower with Ree. I went to my dressing room instead and pulled on a pair of jeans and a tank top. Normally, I'd put on a dress, but since I'd be investigating Nemesis' disappearance, I thought I'd better wear something more practical. I glanced at my full-length mirror on the way out. It was back in its proper place, and all of the dust from Narcissus' mirror had been vacuumed up and taken out of my territory for disposal. I didn't want any part of it near me. I poked my head into the bathroom to tell Ree that I was leaving with Morpheus, but I didn't even glance toward the shower. I knew better than that. I'll go with you, Ree called back. Just give me a few minutes. I'm just going to Nemesis territory with Morph, I said in exasperation. I'll be fine. You're not going alone, Lala, Ree declared as he climbed the steps out of the pool-like tub and started drying off. Where are the others? Trevor's at Moonshine, Kirill is with Lesya, Toby's gone home as he is at school, and Odin's upstairs sleeping, I think. Why don't you tell Odin we're leaving while I get dressed? Ree walked by me, rubbing his dark hair briskly with his towel. When his hair was wet I could barely see the golden highlights in it. Fine. I rolled my eyes and headed for the stairs to Odin's tower. I see where Lesya gets it. Ree's voice followed me up the stairs. I grimaced and grumbled all the way to Odin's room. I couldn't help acting like a child if I got treated like one. Odin. I knocked on his door but there was no answer. Odin. I went into the room and smiled softly when I saw Odin passed out across his bed. The room spanned out in a near circle from the doorway, the bed's square bulk leaving an odd hole behind it even though it was pushed up against the far side of the tower. I'd made Odin a table curved on one side to fit the space precisely. He had set family pictures on it, him and I together, our sons Thor and Yule. I hadn't realized it before but there wasn't a picture of Thrud there. Not that I blamed him, from my experience Thrud was more like her mother than Thor. Cold, unyielding and unreasonable. Odin may love her, but he probably found it difficult to like her. I went to the bed and gently shook him awake. Odin. Odin blinked his eyes open and stared up at me sleepily. His peacock-colored irises glittered a deep, iridescent purple. He smiled after he focused them on me. Hey. Odin pulled me down beside him. The scent of crisp mountain air surrounded me and I sighed. Odin always smelled fresh even when he shouldn't. I snuggled in against him and just breathed him in for a second. Morpheus is here, I told him. He says that Nemesis is missing. She was supposed to meet him this morning to talk about Narcissus. What about Narcissus? I told him what Morph had told me and Odin sat up, got out of bed and started putting on his clothes. I admired his thick, muscled body and the perfect curve of his ass while he did. I started to wonder if I might spare a few minutes to appreciate that divine display when it occurred to me why Odin might be getting dressed. You don't have to come along. Ree is already insisting on joining us, I said. I want to go. Odin glanced back at me. This whole situation feels unfinished to me, Vervain, and I don't like leaving things unfinished. Neither do I. I sighed deeply and stood. I had promised myself I'd be more careful so I didn't have the right to complain about backup. All right, come on. Odin followed me downstairs where we found Ree ready and waiting. He nodded at Odin in approval and we took the elevator to the first floor where we met up with Morpheus. His eyes widened at my escort. Is this a family outing? Morph asked. This is family security, Odin corrected with a pointed look at my belly. She's not leaving this territory with only one husband. Morpheus nodded. Fair enough. I don't mind the extra help. Alan, I caught one of my lions as he went walking by. Yes, Tima. Could you let Kirill know that I've gone with Odin and Ree to help Morpheus find his aunt? Of course. He frowned. Do you need some lions to go with you? I can grab some of the guys. No, we should be fine with the three of us, but thank you. Alan nodded and ran off to find Kirill. Can we go now? Morpheus asked impatiently. I'm worried about Nem, she never misses a meeting and she's always on time. She thinks to do otherwise is disrespectful. Then something or someone has prevented her from showing you respect, Odin said. Let's find out what it is. Chapter 31. Wow, I said. Huh, Odin added. What the fuck is this? Ree asked. We stood before an English cottage. It had a traditional thatched roof, white plaster walls. Is it plaster? Spackle? Bone dust? I don't freaking know. With a wood framework and casement windows. A wild patchwork of blooming flowers in all sizes grew exuberantly to both sides of a cobbled path that led to the front door. Auntie Nem likes things soft and feminine, Morpheus explained as he led us to the cottage. It just goes to show that magic may influence a god's appearance but it doesn't change who they are underneath, I said. I don't know, Odin murmured. Nemesis seems to be pretty tough inside and out. Can you guys get over the fact that she likes flowers and lace and help me look around? Morpheus asked with irritation. Sorry, we all mumbled. It may have been a cottage but it was a large cottage. Dainty rooms of cozy furniture, tea paraphernalia, and doilies filled both of the 2 floors. Not a single one of those rooms held a hint as to where Nemesis had gone. I wandered into her bedroom and shook my head at the patchwork quilt neatly covering her bed. Motion caught my attention out of the corner of my eye, and I jerked in its direction, but it was only my reflection in a full-length mirror. One of those oval ones on a stand. I laughed a little at myself for my jumpiness, but the mirror gave me an odd feeling, and I ended up scurrying from the room with an itch between my shoulder blades. I tried to track Nemesis using my dragon senses, but her scent was everywhere. If a newer trail existed, it had blended with the older ones, and became nearly impossible to distinguish. Either that or Nemesis hadn't come home in a while. Frankly, I was leaning toward that theory. My dragon was simply too powerful to not pick up the nuances of a newer trail. I got nothing, I said as our group reconvened in the living room. I don't think Nemesis has been here lately. We didn't find anything unusual either, Odin answered for both him and Ree. What am I going to do? Morpheus whined. You said that Narcissus' father gave him a part of his territory, I mused. That's right, Morph agreed. Torrent can get us through any ward. We just need to know what direction to point him in, I said. I don't know where Narcissus' territory is, but if we can get into his father's territory, it would border Narcissus, and then Torrent should be able to get us through the wards. Brilliant, Morpheus declared. What if Nemesis isn't there? Ree asked. We'll be invading Narcissus' territory for nothing. I think we have valid suspicions, I said. If she's not there, I'll apologize and we'll leave. But Narcissus needs to be questioned if nothing else. Fair enough, Ree agreed. I need to head to Artie's place to grab Torrent, and then we can go see Narcissus' father, I said. We had all been to Artemis territory before, so it wasn't a problem to trace. There. We went immediately, passing through the ether to step out of her tracing room and into the foyer of her home. Artemis lived in a grand palace in the center of a forest on one of the Greek islands in Oceanus. Her home surged up 3 stories in gleaming polished stone splendor, and its interior overflowed with priceless antiques, artwork, heavy furniture, and dogs. Artie loved her puppies. A huge pack of them came running toward us, barking merrily. There were 2 black and white dogs, 3 with mahogany coats, 1 spotted, that one I'd met before, his name was Fletch, and 7 that looked like larger versions of Great Danes. They flowed around us in a furry tide until the sea was parted by their mistress. All right, you curs, get back, Artemis huffed affectionately as she pushed her pups away. Hey guys, what's going on? Hey Artie, I'm looking for Torrent. Is he here? I asked. I'm in here, Torrent called from another room. Come on in. Artemis waved us forward with one sleekly muscled arm. Artie was in jeans like me, but hers hung loosely on her trim hips. She had an athletic physique and Greek features that made us look even more different. Despite our similar coloring, her hair was nearly the same shade of brown as mine, her skin just as fair, and her eyes just as dark. But her stare was more puppy dog than almond, and her hair, although wavy, hung straighter than mine. She led us into a cozy living room where Torrent snuggled on a couch near a crackling fire. Tor looked up and grinned as we entered. He was a bit fairer than Artemis, his skin porcelain pale with a soft blush in all the right places. It used to be poreless, too perfect to be real, but Torrent had eased into a more natural look. His shockingly green eyes gleamed with childlike earnestness but didn't have the same impossible lime glow that they used to. In short, he had allowed himself to become a real person. Hey V. Torrent sat up. You need me. We're trying to find Nemesis, and we think she may be in Narcissus' territory, I said. Narcissus has a territory already? Artemis asked in surprise. His father gave him a piece of his, Morpheus explained. Vervain thinks that if we get into Cephis's territory, maybe Torrent could find a way through Narcissus wards. Family get-togethers must be annoying, I muttered. What with all the names ending in Sue's? Greeks. Ree shook his head. Wait. Artemis looked at Morph. Nem is missing? Since when? She was supposed to meet me this morning and never showed, Morpheus said. That's not like her, Artie murmured. Which is why we're going after her, I concluded. Well, I can get you into Cephis's territory, Artie said. His grandson is my nephew. His grandson. I blinked at her. Cephissus' daughter, Melino, had a son with Apollo, she clarified. We're kind of related. All of you Greeks are kind of related, Rhys said. Isn't that the Egyptian pot calling the Greek kettle black? Artemis huffed. You have me there. Rhys chuckled. Whatever the case, I'm not looking a Trojan horse in the mouth, I said. I'll gladly take the help. Isn't the Trojan horse the reason we have that saying about being wary of Greeks bearing gifts? Torrent asked. That's why it's funny, I said patiently. Right. Gift horse, Trojan horse. Torrent snickered. I get it now. Well, this Greek doesn't have to sneak anyone in. Artemis gestured for us to follow her. I have the chant. We went back to her tracing room with Torrent in tow, and then everyone held hands so Artemis could trace us into Cephissus' territory. Chapter 32. We reformed in a Greek pavilion on the bank of a wide river. A bridge led to an island in the center of the river, an island nearly covered by a medieval castle. Obviously, it was the source of inspiration for Narcissus' palace. The location, not the actual construction. A lot of Greeks went traditional, but Cephissus was going with the day's theme and straying from the norm. The tracing pavilion was all his adopted culture would get. We ambled over the arch of the stone bridge and came to the castle's gate. An iron portcullis guarded an empty courtyard. I stared up the sheer walls, but no one manned the guardhouse either. Water slapped against stone boulders along the island's perimeter, the liquid equivalent of wind whistling through the trees. Cephissus, Artemis shouted. I know you're in there. I just wanted to let you know that we're looking for Nemesis and we'll be wandering through your territory. Why are you looking for that bitch here? A man strode up to the iron portcullis as if he'd been waiting nearby. I could see Narcissus in his face, but he wasn't as attractive as his son. Cephissus had blonde hair hanging in lanky disarray around his wide brow, watery blue eyes, and a greedy look to him. I don't know what it was exactly, perhaps his mouth or the angle of his jaw, but I got selfish vibes from him. Don't call her a bitch, Cephissus, Morpheus growled. Your son was in the wrong and you know it. Regardless, Cephissus growled, Nemesis is not welcome here. Precisely why we are here, Artemis said. Nem was keeping an eye on your son. And now she's disappeared. We heard that you gave Narcissus a portion of your territory, so we're here to pass through into his. You can't pass through. He laughed. He's not going to let you in. We have our ways, Artemis said. Just point us in the right direction. I'll do you one better, Cephissus said as he hit a lever in the portcullis. Lifted. I'll take you to the border. It's right over there. Cephissus waved his hand behind us and headed through our group. We gave each other wary looks before cautiously following him. He walked across the bridge, and then across a meadow before he suddenly stopped. The air felt thicker there and something shimmered in it. There you go, do your worst. Cephissus stood aside. No one drew attention to Torrent. We didn't want to let this stranger know what Tor could do, and Tor didn't need to wave his hands about or even move at all to unmake a ward. He just stared at the border. We all waited as we stared straight ahead along with Torrent. Cephissus scrunched up his face as he watched us. What the fuck are you doing? Shua, Artemis hushed him. Almost done. Sweat broke out on Torrent's brow and his breathing deepened. Finally he shook his head infinitesimally. I widened my eyes at him. This was new. Artemis handled it perfectly, sighing deeply before casting a look at Cephissus. Looks as if you're right, river god, she said. We'll be on our way. Ha! I told you, Cephissus said. My boy's got good wards up. If I find out that you or your son had anything to do with Nemesis' disappearance, I will personally see to it that you are summoned before the Olympians and held accountable, I said in a cool but dangerous tone. Cephissus went pale. In light of that, is there anything you'd like to say? I asked him. If Narcissus took Nemesis, I have no knowledge of it, Cephissus growled. Now, get the fuck out of my territory, Godhunter. That's an Olympian you're talking to. Artemis snapped. You will show her the respect she deserves. She's an Olympian because she killed a bunch of other Olympians, Cephissus snapped. I'm sorry if I don't feel that should earn her a seat at the table, much less my respect. Fair enough. I was surprised by the offer myself, I said casually. But perhaps you should think about what you just said. I killed 3 of the 12 Olympians and took Zeus' magic before I knocked him and Hera off their thrones. I'm probably not the best person to piss off. Cephissus grimaced and turned on his heel to stalk back into his river castle. Chapter 33. What happened, Tor? I asked as soon as we stepped out of Artemis' tracing room. There was no ward to unmake, Torrent said in utter bafflement. What do you mean? Odin asked slowly. You couldn't find the entrance? You don't understand, there was no entrance, Tor said. There was no way into his territory. It was as if he had completely sealed himself off from the rest of the god realm. Sealed himself off, I murmured, as he was in the mirror. You think he did it on purpose? Rhea asked. Some prisoners who have been incarcerated for several years can't handle freedom, I said. They'll try to confine themselves in small spaces again. It's a mental thing. So Narcissus got out, freaked out, and then locked himself in his territory, like a crazy convict. Artemis asked skeptically. I don't buy it. If that's the case, where's Nemesis? Good question. I grimaced. I don't him, but there's no way that a god would seal himself in his territory without a way out, Rhea said. There has to be a portal. You must have missed it, Torrent. No offense. None taken, but I assure you I missed nothing, Torrent said. I examined every piece of that place. The boundary was seamless, as slick as glass. As slick as glass, I murmured. Vervain, will you please stop muttering cryptically beneath your breath? Odin asked. Sorry. I shrugged. It keeps reminding me of the mirror. You think that Narcissus made the border of his territory a mirror? Rhea asked. I wouldn't even know how to do that. I doubt that a minor deity who's been entrapped for over 1,000 years would. Unless the mirror taught Narcissus a few tricks, I suggested. A curse teaching a god? Odin lifted his brows. It was sentient enough to have a conversation with me, I pointed out. Narcissus thought they were friends. The mirror warned me about him. Remember. But to teach requires advanced knowledge, Odin pointed out, and the mirror would only know what Nemesis had put into it. And what the humans it consumed knew, I added. It took their knowledge? Odin asked in horror. It taunted me with that fact. I nodded. I think it even gleaned a few tidbits from me while I was there. Put me in an illusion of a nightmare I used to have when I was a little girl. What kind of nightmare? Rhea asked. One where I was being burned at the stake as a witch, I whispered. What? Odin growled. Except in the mirror's illusion, Lesya was strapped to the stake, I added. That was one evil fucking mirror, Morpheus declared. No kidding, I muttered. And if it learned that from you, there's no telling what else it found in your mind, Odin said in concern. Or in Trevor's or Kirill's or any of the humans who died inside it. Exactly, I said. And what if it passed that knowledge to Narcissus? We need to get into that territory, Rhea said urgent. Chapter 34. Torrent, Artemis and Morpheus returned to Pride Palace with Rhea, Odin and I. To give it all a good think. My other husbands had come home and were waiting. With Kirill in the little kitchen area of our suite. Lesya was asleep in her room, so we were able to talk freely. We updated them on the situation and settled into a good discussion. We were about an hour in when Alexandri arrived. Alexandri is Athena's talking owl. He's basically an elevated carrier pigeon delivering messages for his mistress. He's a massive bird with a huge wingspan, probably as wide as I am tall, and pristine white feathers. He also has a bit of an attitude. I chalk it up to stress from a heavy workload now. That Athena ruled Olympus, but I've known the owl since before she took the job and he's always been a bit snooty. Today his superior attitude was covered by panic. Godhunter, gather your gods, Alex said as he soared into the room. Loose the lions. Phone the Frokn. The Olympians are under attack. Phone the Frokn. Trevor asked Odin under his breath. What is this, Are we a bunch of aliens? Odin just chuckled. What are you talking about, Alex? I asked as he circled our heads. 2 Olympians have gone missing. Alex shouted. Alex, I swear to the gods, if you wake my daughter again I will kill you. Stuff you, mount you over a fireplace and put a brass plaque beneath you with the name Hedwig inscribed on it, I growled. The owl settled on the floor beside my chair and lowered his voice. Who is Hedwig? The greatest owl who never lived, Azrael said in a reverent tone. Alex just stared at him before he spun his head around to me. Hephaestus and Hera are missing. What about Hermes? No one went after the final H. I asked. We have Hestia and Hades too, Artemis corrected me. That's a lot of H's, I noted. I never noticed before, she said and harumphed. A lot of us too, Apollo. Me, Athena, Aphrodite. Oh wait, she's dead, but there's also Ares. Nope, he's dead too. She grimaced. Well, there would have been a lot of A's if not for you, Vervain. Oops, I said dryly. Alexandri blinked his round, owl eyes at me. What are you talking about? Never-living owls, H's and A's? This is serious. Athena needs you to attend her. Maybe we should warn Hades, I said to the men, since he's another H. I seriously doubt someone is targeting Olympians whose names start with H. Alex shouted. I glared him into silence. It's far more likely that they're targeting the least powerful and working their way up, Odin suggested. All right, let's put this on hold and see what Athena has to say. We all stood up and Alex sighed in relief, the sound whistling out of his beak. Thank you. Alexandri wobbled into the hallway and then glided down the spiraling stairwell to the tracing room on the bottom floor of the palace. I'll ask Aiden to come up and watch TV in here until Lesya wakes up, Trevor offered. Aiden is out with girlfriend, Kirill said. Girlfriend? I asked in surprise. He's dating a demoness. Kirill grinned. How perfect, Odin murmured. It may just take a demon to put up with his hellish humor. I shot Odin a look and he shrugged, completely unrepentant. Lucian is home, Kirill said. I'll ask him. Morpheus, Torrent, and Artemis decided to join us as well. Since Artemis was an Olympian too, I didn't think Athena would mind. I contemplated calling Hades, but I had a feeling that Athena had done that already. So we saw to my daughter care and then traced to Olympus. My first day back from V-Day vacations, and it was turning out to be a long one. Chapter 35. Athena lives in Zeus' old palace on the highest peak of Mount Olympus. She'd been slowly redecorating. I'd noticed some changes when I'd been there to talk about the Argentinian gods, but it was a lot more evident on this visit. The pure white Grecian palace was now done up inside like a Victorian home. Hand-painted wallpaper covered the walls, some in rich, velvet-embossed jewel tones and some in softer pastels. There was stained glass in the windows, carved crown moldings near the ceilings, and frosted globe lamps sitting atop spindly tables. Athena met us in the garden courtyard before the palace and led us through the comfy interior until we settled in a chinoiserie sitting room. The Chinese influence was overdone in the best Victorian way. Hand-painted designs of delicate trees, blossoming flowers and long feathered birds adorned the gilded walls. Moldings drooped in pagoda slopes painted a soft sage green. An enormous gold and green mirror hung over the moss green marble fireplace, its sweeping lines topped with dancing Chinese people. A blue and white china urn sat before the cold fireplace, and tables which perfectly fit the niches to either side held more vases in similar styles. The modern Victorian couches curved their gilded arms and backs beneath cushions in the same green as the accent molding. I took a seat on a couch set before an intricately painted folding screen. The perfection made me nervous. I folded my hands in my lap, afraid to touch anything. Hades and Persephone were indeed there already, sitting in some chairs by the fireplace, and the remaining Olympians were scattered around the large room. Poseidon, Apollo, Hestia, and Hermes. The tally fell far short of the original 12. Thank you for coming, Athena said. I'm glad you were with Vervain, Artemis. I sent Alexandri to your territory, but you weren't there. We were trying to find Nemesis, Artemis said. Nemesis is missing too? Athena looked at the other gods in concern. Are there any other Greeks missing? I'll check, Alexandri offered and flew off his perch in a corner and out an open window. What's going on? Hades growled as he pulled off his sunglasses with a sharp motion. Flames flared brightly behind the translucent brown of his irises. Easy hotness. Persephone laid a comforting hand on her husband's arm. We'll figure it out. I haven't heard any rumors of vendettas against us. Hermes scowled as if his ignorance concerned him more than the fact that his fellow gods were missing. Hermes is Pan's father, and he used to be one of Aphrodite's lovers. We'd been at odds with each other for a long time, but then Lesya had gone missing and Hermes had helped me. I wouldn't forget that. Not ever. We had a sort of grudging truce going now, and I was learning that being friends with a messenger god had its perks. Hermes had a news empire that included several sources, although it seemed that his sources had failed him this time. If Hermes don't know the deal, things are looking bleak for sure. Poseidon? A.K. Donnie piped up in his surfer accent. He ran a hand through his platinum blonde hair and shook his head at the terrible state of our affairs. Hold on. Artemis straightened her power suit as she sat forward. How did you discover that Nemesis is missing? She didn't show up for a meeting we had scheduled, Morpheus said. She wanted to discuss Narcissus. Narcissus? Athena murmured thoughtfully. You think it could be him? Apollo, Artemis' twin brother, asked. For once Apollo looked normal. He was dressed in jeans and a band shirt and lacked his usual entourage of muses. His shoulder-length blonde hair hung in a sloppy ponytail and his baby blues looked anxious. I abruptly recalled that Apollo is a god of prophecy, among other things, and I wondered if he'd seen something. I didn't ask, I hated prophecies. I can see why he'd go after Nemesis, but why would Narcissus mess with the Olympians? Odin asked. Because we sanctioned Nemesis' curse, Hestia said. I didn't, Hades corrected. That was before Persephone and I became Olympians. Before Vervain joined as well. Then perhaps you three are safe, Athena offered. But someone seems to be picking off the rest of us, and Narcissus is as good a guess as anyone. Better than good, Hermes said. Likely. You don't have any other clues? I asked Athena. She just gave me an annoyed look. How did you discover that the two of them were missing? Morpheus asked. I had a business meeting with Hephaestus to discuss the new jewelry designs I had for him, Athena explained. He never showed. I went to his territory and found his forge cold. Several of the Greeks inhaled sharply. I looked around in surprise. Gasp, I said dryly. What's with the forge? Why is it so important? Hephaestus never lets his forge go cold, Artemis explained. It's a physical representation of his magic. All right, I said. What about Hera? I checked on the other Olympians and they were fine, but I had a bad feeling. Athena's jaw clenched. So, I sent Alexandre to find Hera, and he came back with news that she wasn't home. Maybe she's gone into hiding, I suggested. After what happened to Zeus, I wouldn't blame her. I searched for her extensively. Athena shook her head. As the head of the Olympians, I can find any of our council, ex or current. Hera is not in the human realm. You can find any of us? I asked in surprise. You gave me a vow, she reminded me. Yes, I can find you. But your husbands have closer ties to you than I. They'd be able to track you faster. Faster wasn't my concern, I muttered. What about the god realm? Hades asked. You said Hera wasn't in the human realm, but what about our realm? I'm assuming she's here somewhere, but I can't feel her, Athena said. The connection feels muted. No, that's not right. Feels as if it's there, but it doesn't connect to her anymore. I don't know how to explain it. Morph, you remember what you told me about my magic when I was in the mirror? I asked him. How you had to check it at the door? Morpheus asked. Yeah. So, check it at the door? Athena asked. The mirror held my magic in its glass when I passed through, I explained. While inside it, I couldn't access any of my god magic. It was created to imprison a god and bind his magic, so when I passed through it did what it was created to and grabbed my god magic. I didn't get my magic back until after I destroyed it. What does that have to do with this? Hermes asked. I was wondering if magic held in check might create the same sensation that Athena is describing, I said. Athena blinked and then looked at the others. Perhaps. But the mirror is destroyed, correct? Yes, but Narcissus and the mirror shred things, I said thoughtfully. We were just discussing the possibility that the mirror had taught Narcissus things he'd learned from consuming humans and possibly from delving into the minds of my husbands and me. Is that something that can be taught? Hermes asked. How to hold on to it? God's magic. I don't know. I shook my head. I would have said no a few months ago, but then we had the problem with those Argentinians. That was bananas, Donnie said. You're right, V-Lady, anything is possible. This has got to be Narcissus, Trevor said. It's all too coincidental with the timing and the particular gods involved. We just tried to get into Narcissus' new territory through his fathers. Morpheus added. There isn't a way in. What do you mean? Athena scowled. There has to be a way in. He would need it for himself if no one else. We think that Narcissus may have locked himself in, I said. Locked himself in? Donnie repeated. Dude, that's nutso. Who would do that? Shit. Someone who has been in prison for a really fucking long time, Hermes said. Pensively. That's what I said, I agreed. So how do we bust through a bogus border like that? Donnie asked. I think you're all forgetting something, Odin said. Every eye turned toward him. If Narcissus has sealed himself away, he couldn't possibly be the one abducting gods. We all sat back and pondered that. But if he is doing this, Odin went on, then there must be a way into his territory. We just need to find it, Athena said. Or make him show it to us, Kirill suggested. You want one of us to be bait. Hermes grimaced at Kirill. Kirill shrugged. If you can't track animal, you set trap and make it come to you. There are only 6 of us originals left, Athena pointed out. How do we determine which one he'll come for next? Setting a trap is about making it alluring, Trevor noted. Does anyone have an idea of who Narcissus hates the most out of you 5? Which of you have wronged him personally? They looked at each other and shrugged. Honestly, none of us had much to do with Narcissus, Apollo said. I, especially, didn't like him, but it wasn't personal. Let me guess. It was because Narcissus thought he was more attractive than you, I asked with a smirk. He was obviously deluded, Apollo huffed. It's him. I pointed at Apollo. Narcissus will go for Apollo next. What? Apollo gaped at me. Why? For the same reason you'd go after him, Athena said as she nodded. Vanity. You both have it in droves. And humans always associate vanity with women, Artemis huffed. When a man is vain, he's so much worse than any woman could be. Thanks a lot, sis, Apollo grumbled. Just calling it as I see it, bro, she shot back. Then Artie got serious. And I think they're right, AP. We need to get some security on you. What we need to do is figure out a way to follow Narcissus into his territory. When he comes for Apollo, I said. If we catch him, we could try to force him to take us in, but it may not work. He's tricky. It would be better if we could follow him home. The gods began to murmur among themselves. I just waited. I was still learning a lot of god stuff despite my years among them, and I didn't have a clue on how to piggyback into a god territory, at least not without physically holding on to the piggy. We need a leash, Donnie said. Like with a dog? Paulo asked. Like with a board, dude. Donnie rolled his eyes. Your leash ties you to your board, so even if you go over the falls, you don't lose it, comprehend? You might end up tombstoning with your board bobbing up and you dangling in the drink, but you ain't gonna lose your stick. Does anyone know what he just said? Hermes asked. We need a way to tie ourselves to Narcissus, I explained. Then he'll pull us through even if he tries to shake us loose. But how? He's one of ours, Athena said with a grin. I can leash him. I just need to get close enough to grab him. A caw.